Hello and welcome to the Knitting House podcast. I'm Claudia. I haven't done this in a while, but here I am again. Because it's winter and now the knitting fever is back. Actually, that's a bit of a lie because the knitting fever didn't entirely leave me over the summer. In fact, I did a few summer projects, all of which failed. I don't really want to talk about them now. Maybe at some point I will, but right now I mostly want to talk about the good things, the successful projects, and about one really annoying thing that nearly killed my enjoyment of knitting. I wonder if you can tell what that is just from this teaser. No, the truth is you probably can tell what that is because I'll have put it in the title of this video. Anyway, before we get to the gruesome part, let me show off my new jumper. This is what I've kind of been working on ever since I started this podcast. This is the Helia jumper by Joanna. And I started working on this in March and I finished it in October. And I love it. So today I want to talk a little bit about that knitting experience, about the pattern itself, and about the jumper. So the Helia jumper, this is the pattern, is a top-down raglan with a cable pattern on the sleeves and a sort of twisted rib motif throughout. So you can see that the neckline and the hem and also the sleeves are all in twisted rib. This is the pattern. It is very long. It is 13 pages of really detailed pattern writing. And I mostly just want to talk about how excellently written this pattern is. Incidentally, I was thinking about doing, at the end of the year, a sort of review of the knitting patterns I've used, specifically the knitting patterns I've bought. So I wonder if there is the appetite for that. I'm kind of new to the knitting social media. I come from bookish social media, I come from BookTube, and obviously on bookish social media it's fairly common to review the things you read and to review them honestly. However, I have the slight feeling that in the knitting world it's much more common to not do that. I think there is a bit of an idea that, you know, as a community, maybe you shouldn't talk. Minerva, I swear to God, if you spill my tea over my laptop, I will be very, very angry. Let's stop for a little cat break. This is Minerva. I'm not sure if I've actually introduced her properly on this channel. She is a very naughty cat and she's incredibly cute and very, very needy. Even though right now she doesn't want attention, she just wants... Actually, I don't know what she wants. There's my neighbour driving by, probably wondering what the hell I'm doing here. Anyway. God, where was I? So, is there the demand for a sort of end of year review of the knitting patterns that I bought, in which I'll be talking about the quality of the knitting patterns, not necessarily the design, because if I buy a knitting pattern, chances are I like the item, I like how it looks. So I won't be talking so much about the actual look of the finished garment or the design elements that go into the pattern, but I'll be talking about how the pattern's written and how easy it is, I guess, to understand, how much flexibility there is in terms of the sizing and the customization options and all of that good stuff. So, yeah, if that's a thing that people do, let me know. If it's a thing that I should avoid, because I really do not want to stir up any shit here, then let me know as well, and I'll just not do that. So, this, however, if I was to do a review of knitting patterns, this would be straight up A star, 10 out of 10, would knit again, because the level of effort and detail that's gone into this is absolutely exceptional. It's got everything you want from a knitting pattern. It has very detailed measurements, it has schematics, it has all of the measurements in metric and imperial. So it's got the measurements, for example, for the finished garment in centimeters and inches for every size. It's got the yarn requirements in meters and yards. It has a perfect schematic with all of the details you might want to know about it. It has a complete glossary of abbreviations used in the pattern. It has very easy to understand charts with a perfectly legible and understandable legend. And it has incredibly well written instructions. This all seems like a lot, but there isn't really much unnecessary information in this pattern. Everything is really well thought out, and I feel like this is the sort of pattern that is going to appeal to both beginners and experienced knitters. I put myself very much towards the beginner end of the spectrum. I haven't been knitting for that long, I think maybe 3 or 4 years, and I'm not a very fast knitter, I'm not a very intensive knitter, so for me all of these things were super useful. The abbreviations, glossary, the links to videos that show certain techniques, all of that stuff. However, an experienced knitter who can do cables in their sleep is going to be just fine by looking at the charts and looking at the written instructions. As you can tell, this printed out pattern has been heavily used, and I have noticed that I prefer to knit with pen and paper rather than marking everything with stitch markers. So in particular, when it comes to counting rounds, I prefer to do that with a pen. This becomes particularly relevant in the sleeves when there are two different set of rounds that you need to count off at the same time. So I think one of them might be the decrease round, and then the other one is where you're at in the chart or something. I've already forgotten most of the details of knitting this because it's so complicated. But yeah, so counting with the pen came in quite handy. So absolutely full marks for the way the pattern is written. This was not a cheap pattern. I believe it might have been around 10 euros. So definitely on the upper end of what I'm willing to pay for a single pattern, but admittedly a lot of effort went into it, and I think the price is fair enough. I'm definitely going to knit more Joanna Ang jumpers. I like her design style and I really like her pattern writing style. So about the design, this wool that I've chosen, see, I'm already making beginner's mistakes. This yarn that I've chosen is not best suited to show off the intricacies of this pattern. I have chosen the Drops brushed alpaca silk and combined that with my black street yarn. So the Drops brushed alpaca silk is this sort of teal color that I got in the sale last year, I think, when there was a huge sale on alpaca yarns from Drops. And the street yarn is some yarn that I found on the street. I think it's wool. It certainly singes like wool, and it smells like wool. And it's a very brittle, black, thin yarn. So it's a lace weight yarn, but it's not mohair or anything like that. It's just, I think, a 2-ply wound yarn in black. So I've held these double, but you can tell that the brushed alpaca silk is just a little too fluffy to really show the intricacies of the cables. So if I'm going to do something like this again, I would definitely choose a different yarn. However, I still really like how it looks, I like how it fits, and I like how it feels. Because of the alpaca, it's very lightweight, it's very fluffy. In fact, you can see it's pilling already. It's definitely going to require some very careful washing and so on. And the cable motifs on the shoulders, on the sleeves, are something that you probably won't notice right away because of how fluffy the yarn is. But overall, I'm really pleased with this. This was a challenge for me to knit because it's the first cable project that I've made really, other than an improvised, very easy cable hat. So this was the first time I've done cables, and this pattern really throws you in at the deep end if you are new to cables. However, at this point, I can do cables in my sleep. It's the same with the twisted rib, or half twisted rib. The one where the knits are twisted and the pearls aren't. At the beginning, it slowed me down a bit. By the end, I was doing it automatically without even thinking about it. And I like the effect of the twisted rib. I think the twisted rib shows out quite well in this yarn. It's just a really nice jumper, and one that I think would appeal to a lot of people. I think the design of it is very modern, but at the same time, because of the cables, it has a sort of very knitty quality. You know, it's not pretending to be anything other than a knitted jumper. Generally, I think I really like jumpers with interesting sleeves. So that's a design element that I realize I like and that I'm going to look out for in future projects. Yeah, nice sleeves, clearly my thing. The other thing about very intricate sleeves and a simple body is that it offers a good amount of variety in knitting. You know, you've got the stockinette body for a little bit of mindless progress where you feel like you're doing a lot, and then you've also got the sleeves to keep you busy and keep your mind engaged when you're doing those particular bits. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this. I'm really happy with this jumper. Really happy with it. So I'm currently editing this, and I completely forgot to mention that when I knit the Helia jumper, I accidentally made one arm much longer than the other because I accidentally knit a whole extra repeat of the chart, which is like a 40-row chart on one arm, and I literally only noticed when I put the jumper on and I thought, hang on, this doesn't quite fit right. So here, enjoy my photo of the original jumper with one enormously long arm and one normal length arm, and you can imagine my joy at having to unravel that cable knit pattern with 2 yarns and then knit it to the correct length. That was fun. That added like a whole extra week to the knitting. After I finished this jumper, however, I really wanted to knit something a lot simpler. And so I knit myself a cozy classic raglan. This is a pattern by Jessie Maed Designs that I have knit once before. And this version that I'm made now, I'm not going to talk about this one in great detail in this video. I want to do that in a future video because I want to dedicate as much time to this as I did to the Helia jumper. But basically in this one I used some baby merino, I think drops baby merino, in various colors with a black mohair. This is an idea that I had over the summer, and doing this after I finished the Helia jumper seems like the perfect opportunity to just do something mindless and simple, and something that flew off the needles very, very quickly. So while the Helia jumper took me like half a year to knit, this raglan took just over a month. So I knitted this in 1 month and 3 days. And I'm really happy with it as well. Like I said, I'm going to show this off a little more in a future video, possibly the next video. But now I want to talk about the thing that almost ruined my love for knitting, and it's moths. It's always bloody moths. And I heard about moths being bastards and eating people's knitting, and I've never had it happen to me until this summer. Because what happened was at the beginning of the summer, I put all my jumpers away into a cupboard. Yeah, a cupboard, not a shelf, a cupboard, a closed cupboard. And those bastards still got in, laid their stupid little eggs, hatched their stupid little baby moths that ate my wool. There were 4 knit items in the cupboard, all of which I immediately stuck in the freezer because that's what I read you're supposed to do. Well, actually, that's not true. If you look up moth damage online, the first thing the internet tells you is to wash everything at 60 degrees. Now, we know that we can't just put our knits in the wash at 60 degrees. Even superwash yarns, you can't wash at 60 degrees. So then the next thing it says is put your knits in the freezer. That's what I did. Wasn't sure for how long. Some pages tell you 3 days, other pages tell you 3 weeks. I thought better safe than sorry and put everything in for like 2 or 3 weeks. And after I took them out, I surveyed the damage. That's a lie. One jumper is still in the freezer, and that one I just haven't had the nerve to take out and process. However, this is the jumper that got damaged the most, and this is also a Cozy Classic Raglan by Jessie Maed Designs. This is in fact one of the very earliest jumpers that I've knit, and I really love it. I really like this jumper. I like the colour, I like the fit, I like to wear it. And now, dun dun dun, big old moth holes. Can stick nearly my whole hand through this. So what the hell am I supposed to do about that? I don't have the yarn anymore. I think I probably know what it is, probably. I didn't keep track of these things years ago when I made this. And it's a really big hole, several really big holes, right here at the hem of this jumper. It's super annoying. I got rid of the moths, obviously, so after I took it out of the freezer, I washed this. This is superwash yarn, so I did wash it in the machine at 30 or 40 degrees. Then I sprayed this with an insecticide, and then I washed it again. So there's no more moth eggs on there, but the damage is done, and I just don't know how to fix it. And when you look up how to fix knitted garments or whatever, all of the examples are like these dainty little holes, or, you know, big holes that get fixed with patches, but I don't really want a patch on that. So if you have any idea for how to fix that, I would like to know. I think the obvious choice would be to just rip it out until I get to the point before the hole, and then just knit a new ribbing and cast off again. However, this is already a sort of slightly cropped jumper. If I do that, it's going to be very cropped, and then I don't know if I'll still want to wear it. So I'm at a bit of a loss about what to do about these bloody moth holes. The jumper that's still in the freezer has got a smaller hole right here at the front. So for that one, I'm going to look up techniques for invisible mending, basically, where it's a sort of duplicate stitch technique, I guess, that you do with a yarn needle. I've still got some of the yarn for that as well, so that should be all right. I might even film the process for a video, depending on how annoyed / motivated I am. Well, I guess depending on where on the scale between annoyed and motivated I am. I've learned my lesson. I've put up moth traps, God. As well as being absolute dickheads that eat our clothes, they also have a stupid name that no one can pronounce. Correction, that I can't pronounce. So I've set up moth traps all over the place, and I have washed and frozen and binned a lot of knitted items that I've seen that have had moth eggs on them. Luckily, those things that I've shown you are the only things that have actual damage, except for the one jumper that's still in the freezer. I am so glad that the yarn I have in storage hasn't had any moth eggs on it. So I checked that as well, and they haven't gotten to that. So that's great, because if the last thing I want is basically to have created a little moth farm in my living room. So everything that had any sort of moth, you know, moths or moth eggs or that little sandy stuff on it, I sprayed with moth spray, which is something, by the way, if you have moths and you also have cats. something you need to be very careful with because the insecticide is not good for cats. So you need to be very careful with how you use it and make sure you keep the cats away and you ventilate properly and you clean everything afterwards. Anyway, I managed to, I think, get rid of all of the moths. I think they were mostly there over the summer anyway. I haven't seen any flying around because now I also pay attention to these things. If I see a moth flying around, I go after it. Well, I send my cats after it, but that's the same thing. I've heard that cedar oil is good against them because they don't like it. So I might get myself some cedar essential oil. Maybe just wipe my cupboard with that, where I keep my knits. But I think the main thing is to just keep checking regularly. Because the moths don't do immediate damage when they lay their eggs on my hand-knitted jumpers that I work very hard for. The damage happens when the eggs hatch and the little bastard larvae start eating my knits. I think with checking regularly, making sure that there's no new developments in the moth region, I should be able to get under control. I think hopefully I've got it under control. I have maybe got half a dozen knitted items like jumpers in that cupboard. So it's not a huge amount of stuff that I need to check regularly. It really is quite doable. What I can't do again is put them away next summer and not look at them. So I have also bought some vacuum clothing bags. I'm sure you know those little plastic bags that you can put your clothes in for the season, and you suck out all the air with a pointless little hand pump, and then ideally they are safe for the summer. So I bought those and I've got them ready for next spring. Right, next I want to show you what I'm currently knitting. And one thing I started literally yesterday is this. What, you don't recognize it? Call yourself a knitter. This is, I had the knitting pattern printed off somewhere. Where the hell did I put that? It is the Gondor vest by Fabel Knitwear. This is my first Fabel Knitwear pattern. And the first thing I noticed is that it is significantly shorter than any other knitting pattern for a top that I've ever knitted. So it's definitely on the minimalist side, but you know what, I'll leave the full review until after I've knitted the whole thing. This is a bottom-up vest, by the way, so I've only just started the ribbing. Well, actually it's all in rib. So I've only just started the bottom. I've knitted about 2 centimeters of the bottom, so there's still a long way to go for this vest to be finished. And the yarns I'm using, behold this moment of anxiety because I haven't actually prepared the yarns I'm using. Okay, so the yarns I'm using are this, which I found in the charity shop for €1.50, and this is a Tweed by Rowan, possibly? I think it might be a Rowan Tweed. It's definitely a discontinued yarn, so even if I were to put the name in the description box, which I will if I remember, it wouldn't really be of much help because it's been discontinued. And I found, I think, 8 skeins of this in the local charity shop for €1.50 each. Incredible deal, right? So obviously I snatched that up. This was, I think, last year. I've already spoken about this yarn in a previous video, so if you want to know more about it, you know, go and find it. It's a really beautiful, beautiful colour. Here you can see the one that I've wound into a ball. Really gorgeous burgundy with tweedy flecks of beige, orange and black. And I'm holding that double with this. This is a Lana Grossa silk merino. And I actually bought this for a different project. I bought this for a summer top that I knitted over the summer. And then realized I don't actually like it. It's a summer top that I didn't finish. I haven't worked the sleeves of that yet. But I realized that actually I'm not living in the right place for knitted summer tops because it gets very, very warm here in the summer. We are talking regular days of over 35 degrees. So in 35 degrees heat, what I want to wear is the thinnest cotton t-shirts and tank tops I can find, not anything hand knit. And so I'm going to unravel that summer top and I'm going to use that to work the vest. The vest calls for a fingering yarn and a silk mohair. However, I thought having a fingering yarn and a lace yarn that's not mohair will do just as well. I would have tried to knit this just with the tweed as well. However, the tweed is very, very fragile. So it just rips really easily. It falls apart. I noticed that when winding it up, and I didn't want to knit with such a fragile yarn on its own. I don't know if it is this particular yarn that's always like this, or if it's just so ancient that it's kind of falling apart a bit. But either way, holding it double with the black silk merino makes it a bit more sturdy. And, you know, it adds a little black marling to the vest, which I don't mind at all. Something else I'm knitting is this double knitted headband. And I'm doing that with leftover yarn from the stripy Raglan jumper. So one side of it is grey, one side of it is green. It's a really basic double knitted stockinette. So there's no colour work, nothing fancy, because this is the first time I'm doing double knitting. And I want to get into the technique. I wanted a headband that's thick and windproof. And I think double knitting really is giving me the right sort of fabric for that. So because I'm new to double knitting, I'm only really doing a few rows at a time here, because after that my hands cramp up a bit, and you know, just getting that right with the 2 strands of yarn over my finger, you know, it's just a little bit more taxing on the muscles than other knitting techniques. But yeah, I'm enjoying learning a new technique. This is, like I said, the first time I'm doing any double knitting. I'm also currently knitting a pair of plain grey socks, which I didn't bring down here. That's my bed knitting. So I've got those socks next to my bed, and I knit that in the evenings like a normal person. If I remember, I'll show them to you when they're done. There's one more thing that I want to cast on quite soon. There's 2 more things that I want to cast on quite soon. One of them is a pair of socks for my mum, because she likes the hand-knitted socks that I've made her before. She doesn't knit herself, she's more of a crocheter. She made these adorable sunflower coasters. She also made this cat blanket. Pretty much anything you see crocheted in any of my videos, it's probably made by my mum. Anyway, so I want to make her a pair of socks for Christmas. And for that, I'm going to go to the local yarn shop and pick out a nice ball of sock yarn. I do love buying sock yarn because it's a small investment. You know, the sort of sock yarn I buy tends to go for between 5 and 10 euros. I don't buy any particularly luxurious sock yarn, but it's like one item that you can go a bit wild on. You can, you know, there's all these different options for colours and textures and all sorts. And I just enjoy it. It's like buying sweets or buying like lipstick or buying like nail polish. It's a little thing that you can treat yourself with. Even though obviously at the end I'm going to gift those socks to my mum, it still feels like a little treat for me. So I'm going to go to the nearby town and buy some sock yarn and then start on some Christmas socks for her. I haven't picked a pattern yet. It's probably going to be a single colour pattern. Might be something lacy, might be something cabled, might be something a lot more simple than that. We'll see. And then one other thing I want to cast on is a sort of hood or balaclava. I have the idea of doing a hood that's quite loose around the face, so not one of the really tight ones, but something I can wear under my winter coat that just looks like I've got a hood sticking out, and then when it gets particularly cold I can pull the hood over my head. Ideally something that fits over my headphones, because I tend to walk around wearing headphones. So if you have any pattern recommendations for that, do let me know. I haven't really done the research yet. And I want to make that from more of the leftover yarn that I have from the jumper, which is a fingering weight yarn. However, I also don't mind taking yarn double to get a bigger yarn weight. God, I'm such an expert at knitting language, you can really tell. Right, I've done enough talking for now. I want to have lunch. So, on that note, I'll see you next time for the Knitting House podcast, which isn't going to be regularly, it'll just be when I remember. Bye.